I'm Kimberly, and the claim I'm going to respond to is action video games have positive mind-stimulating effects on children who play them. And when I went through his sources and his works cited list, all the websites were about video games and education, and his topic was entertainment/education. So I would recommend revising the claim to be action video games can be a tool to educate children. His secondary claims were: 1, playing action video games require children to develop problem-solving strategies. I will explain how he did not fully support this with his evidence. 2, action video games compel children to persevere. He doesn't clearly connect his assumptions with the evidence clearly, and I'll explain how he does that. And 3, action video games beckon children to use improvisational thinking. I'll explain how he did not use the relevant data or the percentage given in his sources. My first response to his first secondary claim that playing action video games require children to develop problem-solving strategies. His first evidence is action video games engage children in challenging activities. According to his source from education.com by J.L. Gibson, he compares education and fun. And actually, challenge and strategy is the fun component of video games. He should have focused on the problem-solving strategies that come from the educational part of video games, like learning new information, memorizing information, and using that information to problem solve and proceed to the next level of the video game. His second evidence is that it furthers the child advances the more the game's difficulty intensifies, and that doesn't really connect to the problem-solving strategies. Another one of his sources, the Raise Smart Kid article, could actually help him support this secondary claim by using a quote by Stephen Johnson, the author of Everything Bad is Good for You, How Today's Popular Culture is Always Making Us Smarter. He says that video games make kids use telescoping, which is gamers must deal with immediate problems while keeping their long-term goals on the horizon. My second response to secondary claim 2 is action video games compel children to persevere. Reading all the sources, I think a stronger secondary claim would have been action video games, many levels, allow a child to persevere and gain confidence. He says that if an object is not met while playing a video game, like a failed mission, the child who's playing is guaranteed multiple chances to retry. The Raise Smart Kid article, quote, can help connect his assumption with multiple chances and persevering and confidence. The quote says, video games increase your kid's self-confidence and self-esteem as he masters games. In many games, the levels of difficulty are adjustable. As a beginner, your kid begins at the easy level, and by constant practicing and slowly building skills, he becomes confident in handling more difficult challenges. Since the cost of failure is lower, he does not fear making mistakes. He takes more risk and explores more. Your kid can transfer this attitude to real life. That leads to my response to the secondary claim, which action video games beckon children to use improvisational thinking. He uses the article, Shooter Video Games Can Improve Decision Making, which is a research in September 2010, headed by Daphne Babler, a scientist from the University of Rochester. This research showed that playing action video games primes the brain to make quick decisions. This actually is good support. However, according to the article, the definition of action video games used in the study was shooter games, where you go through a maze and you don't know when a villain will appear. And this study compares video games Call of Duty to Sims 2 and concluded that people who play Call of Duty were found to be 25% better at decision making. This is the percentage he could have used to support his claim. However good that evidence is, this study is irrelevant because it tested 26 people aging from 18 to 25, and that's not children. But the evidence that he should have used from the same author was from the Raise Smart Kid article is game stimulating stressful events such as those found in battle or action video games could be a training tool for real-world situations. And And the change to the secondary claim I recommend would be connecting the action video games to the real world. For example, how they use flight simulators to train pilots. In conclusion, he should have revised his claim from all the sources he got to be action video games can be a tool to educate children, and to fully support the evidence, his evidence that he found, and clearly connecting his assumptions with his evidence, and also using relevant data and percentages given to him.
All right, you label the structure, you've got the secondary claims down. I think that you are overdoing it on the preview there, and sometimes you do a little bit too much signposting. The biggest issue is that this is more an evaluation than it is a refutation of the argument. In essence, it sounds like a critique of the advocate's argument with suggestions about how to improve the argument as opposed to a response to the argument. To give you a parallel, it would be like the defense attorney saying to the prosecutor, "Oh, you forgot to introduce the fingerprint evidence that connects my client to the crime. Here it is. See, if you'd done that, he would have a much better chance of going to prison." You know, you don't want to be doing that. And you do that in several places. In fact, there are a couple of places where I thought you had a very good explanation about why his argument would have been stronger in that situation, but that's an analysis more than a refutation. The organizational stuff is fine. Like I said, I think you're kind of missing the general gist. You had some valid criticisms of the evidence that was being presented. I like the thought that, for instance, on that last one where you mentioned the Call of Duty and Sims data, where it's mostly played by, the one study was done on 18 to 25-year-olds, and his argument is about kids. So this is really not evidence that can apply to that particular generalization. That's a valid criticism there, but then you kind of follow through with, well, and here's a better way to prove that point, which I don't think is what you want to do. You know, leave that part out of the argument. All right, thank you.